Welcome to Community Forum. My name is John Guglieltino. I'm your host. This evening I'm going to be talking about a subject that's very close to my heart, chiropractic work, which I personally indulge in once a month. And with me is Richard Beck, who's a local chiropractor, and we're going to be talking about the benefits of chiropractic and how it can work with conventional medicine. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your background before we get into the
Sure. Well, I
I
was raised in New York, and I went to Brooklyn College, and then I went to chiropractic college in Georgia. After living in Georgia for a while, although I wanted to go back to the Northeast, close to family, I just didn't feel like I can go back to New York, so I had looked into the state of Connecticut.
Right.
And I've been here for the past 27 years.
Okay. And you live locally with your family?
I live in Bethel with my wife and two daughters.
Okay. All right, very good. Now, how did you get into chiropractic, first of all? Was there some personal experience that got you to go in that direction?
I had a personal experience through sports and some sports injuries and some family members that had been involved in the field, and then I pursued it.
Oh, okay. What is chiropractic? A lot of people are not 100% sure about it. They know it has something to do with crunching bones or whatever, you know.
Chiropractic is based on a theory of trying to affect the entire body via working on the spine. The first chiropractor was a Daniel Palmer out in Davenport, Iowa, and his theory was to use the vertebrae as levers to affect the body. The theory being that here's the spine.
Right, we got a copy of the spine here.
Here's a spine, and the spine itself is a protective mechanism to protect the spinal cord and the exiting nerves. And his theory was to use these bones as levers to affect change to various nerves.
Okay. So, in practicality, what does that mean? For example, there's times I feel very tight in the middle of my back, and it affects, you know, sometimes I get neck aches and what have you. And if I'm adjusted in here, which means the bone moves in a certain way, that gives me relief to my upper body and my neck. What does that actually do? These being the nerve endings that come out? Or,
well, if I could just backtrack, here's this represents the base of the skull, followed by what's called the cervical spine, or the neck. That's the first 7 vertebrae here. Then you have the mid-back or thoracic vertebrae to about here. Those are all the vertebrae that have the ribs that attach. Then you have the lumbar spine, and then the bones of the pelvis.
And there's another problem area. L1 would be what, this one? Or?
L1 would be roughly here.
Okay. Why don't they call that L5? It's like 5 spots up.
Because we number from top down. So it's cervical 1 to cervical 7, thoracic 1 to thoracic 12, L1 to L5.
Oh, okay.
So the area that you were talking about in question would be roughly about the upper mid-back.
Right.
That would affect the region going out to the shoulder blades and shoulders.
Right, because that's where I feel the tightness, and when that's adjusted, that's a great relief.
When that's adjusted, that frees up, also because the muscles that attach to the shoulder blade also attach to these vertebrae as well. So there's one point out to the shoulder blade, one point out to the spine. Additionally, the ribs and the spine have a junction at these bones as well.
Right. Now, this material between the bones, the vertebrae, is what these...
That represents what's called the disc.
That's the disc, and that's a gel-like material that, as you get older, becomes thinner and thinner.
Well, the disc is actually two substances. You have a thick outer layer. It's like a basket weave of fibrous cartilage with a thick gelatinous type material inside.
Right.
As we age, unfortunately, things tend to dry out,
right,
and people have problems.
Right. But if you're well adjusted, that either is delayed or
if things are kept in a line, then that disc can stay hydrated or filled with water longer.
Right. So, but at some point in time, whether it's 100 years or something, it's all going to...
Unfortunately, we do age.
And they're saying, you know, that the human body can last 140 years or whatever. So you're saying that if you keep this... Well, if this keeps this hydrated, that
it could last 140 years if we take very good care of it.
Right. You know, as opposed to all the abuse that we do to ourselves. Any other things we want to point out while we're here? Because I've had that relief there, but some people have had, when they get adjusted down here, have actually felt like movement in their stomach or whatever, that affects their the way.
Well, all these openings here are where the nerves, they call peripheral nerves, coming out of the spinal cord, go to every organ and every muscle and every blood vessel in our body. So a nerve coming out of here, although it's also going to superficial skin and muscle, also has a branch that goes internally to the organs.
Right.
So one down here may go to the colon.
Right.
One up here goes to the heart and lung. Up here, up to the head, and so on.
I have headaches that go away when I get adjusted up here and in the neck area.
Many of the nerves that come out of the back of the spine go up to the back of the skull, and if those attach to muscles and the muscles go into spasm, then you could affect change.
So all of this activity, and when you adjust this, can affect headaches. It can affect
every function,
stomach flow, and all that.
Every function in our body is controlled by the nervous system.
Right, and the nervous system is tied to.
And the nervous system is tied from the brain down through the spinal cord, out to the nerves that.
So that's
follow that
that's
path.
the general theory of how it works.
Yes.
So basically, the benefits of the adjustments are that you free up this bundled up energy that's tied up when there's a, what is that word for it? A subluxation?
Well, the term is called a subluxation,
right.
Coming out of the term luxation, which means a dislocation. But we're not talking about a full dislocation. These parts have not fallen apart. They've moved out of their normal position, or their connection between the bone above or the bone below.
Yeah.
That then signals to these small joints that something is awry, something is wrong. Small muscles then go into spasm. Larger muscles in turn can go into spasm. We get pain that sends even more pain. So what we have to do is to get all these segments back in a line, shutting off. One could make an analogy that it's like a circuit breaker. So we have to shut that circuit breaker by shutting the pain to that area, by getting it to move properly, getting it back into its proper spot.
Yeah, so that brings the discomfort in the shoulders to an end, or the headache to an end, or whatever.
Right. And then, of course, those muscles that have been in spasm need some work on that itself. So in addition to the adjustment, what we call it when we correct the subluxation, therapies can be done to the surrounding musculature as well, because this is a whole system.
Right. Now, for me, once or twice a month is more than enough, because I'm sure there's people thinking, oh, you got to go every 3 days or whatever, you know. But it's up to the individual and what the problem is, how acute it is as to.
Well, I would say that it's a function of the person. Everybody is different. Everyone's a different height. Everyone's a different weight. Everyone's a different age. Everyone has a different history.
Right.
So some people need frequent care. Usually those are people that have been in a recent trauma, something fairly acute.
I was going to mention the two types of clients that you have. You have ones with acute injuries and those that are like a long-term chronic situation. And the acute injuries, you need more frequency, right?
Those usually require more care more frequently, because something has just happened and you want to try to, so to speak, nip the problem in the bud by doing things more frequently.
Otherwise, you can leave.
Otherwise, it's going to, right.
You can get into sciatic pain and,
sure.
and other things. Even more, debilitating situation. When I was first injured, I injured myself. I ran into a wall, and I had sciatic pain going down my neck or my leg, and I had a problem with my neck or whatever. It bothered me for months, but I resisted going initially to a chiropractor, and then I said, well, let me try that, because I was trying conventional, and it worked out.
Right.
But I did go for several weeks.
But that's a perfect example that you knew you had an acute problem.
Right.
You tried to take care of it yourself, and then it became somewhat of a chronic issue.
And when I was on a crutch and stuff, I said, well, do I go to surgery, or do I try this?
Right.
I said, oh, let me try the chiropractor, and it worked out for me. Because knock on wood, haven't had any surgeries.
Very good.
Now, a chronic situation might be just somebody that has, an existing problem that's under control, like L1 in my case, or
right.
like the middle of the back, where that adjustment puts it back in place, and then from time to time it comes out of place, but it gets put back in place.
Well, I would say that most of us would have some sort of, especially when we start to hit the middle-age years, we start to have the badges of aging, so to speak, and we have some chronic things that go back to childhood. Falls out of a tree, sports injuries, lots of football injuries. But I would say that nowadays other issues are caused by by using a computer station in an improper manner. Many people come in from
at the proper level.
Well, the workstation, everyone gets a computer and a mouse, but doesn't get a proper desk for it. You just try to fit it to wherever you can in the house, or even at work. That happens at times too. So we're working for long periods of time in a poor posture, which leads to problems.
Right, because then you have the problems with the wrists and
well, if you're using the mouse
the
incorrectly, for example, and your mouse is higher than normal, well, now that shoulder is going to be affected, and that part of your spine is going to be affected. Your neck will be affected, so everything in turn has an effect on each other.
Right. And there's importance of diet and exercise also. You just can't let, because you're getting adjusted doesn't mean, well, you tolerate obesity,
no,
being 20 pounds over,
no,
because that'll throw the back out also.
Well, that puts a lot of stress on the spine.
Right.
And it prevents you from getting some of the exercise. I'm sure many people try to run or try to walk. They get discouraged, so they just stop.
Right.
But
and that accentuates the problems.
That accentuates the problems and causes its own pain problem too. And now they've done some studies. Abdominal fat actually emits a pain-sensitive chemical called leptins.
Right.
And in addition, many foods that we eat can create a state of inflammation or pain as well. Foods that are very high in omega-6. There's, just to backtrack, the three most known omega acids are omega-3, 6, and 9. Omega-9 is a neutral, which is like an olive oil. Omega-3 is what everybody knows to be in salmon or deep ocean cold water fish.
And that's good for you.
And that's excellent for you. But most important, it's not just the omega-3 by itself. There's a ratio that's important between omega-3 and omega-6. Omega-6 is much more common in grains that we eat, wheat, rye, and the American diet is extremely high in omega-6. So when we have too much omega-6, that leads to the production of pain-creating chemicals as well. So what we need is a balance between the omega-6 and the omega-3.
Yeah. One of these days they'll put it all in a book that we can all read.
Well, I think they have. It's just hard to read.
Right, that's true. That's what I mean, but that we can read. All right. So, and then exercise. We all think that you can get away with 3 times a week, and it's probably more closer to 15 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day that everybody should do.
Well, years ago they had come out with that it should be at least 5 days a week, 40 minutes a day. And the problem with that was that people felt that if they couldn't do the 40 minutes a day 5 times a week, that they failed. So they did nothing. So I say that you should set a goal for 3 to 4 days a week, 20 to 30 minutes each time. But whatever you can do is a plus. I mean, even small things, and I know that this...
Like park at the end of the parking lot.
That drives my family crazy, that when we go to the mall or go anywhere, I park as far away as I can. So at least you can get exercise that way.
Right. Now, what ages are good for someone to actually see a chiropractor? Is it any age, or I mean, there's got to be some limitations. You know, like if after 70, it might be dangerous, right, or wrong?
Well, actually, I find that the older folks are actually much more hardy than we give them credit for. And if they made it that long, then they're pretty sturdy.
Right.
But of course, everything is predicated on a sound examination, history, and any other ailments that they have.
Right.
But most, even, I personally don't do a lot of work on infants, but I would say from ages 2 and above, there are many different types of adjusting. It's not, many people just think of a rigorous thrust that's put into the spine. There are many subtle ways of getting the joint to move as well, which of course you would do on a young child or even the elderly, depending on the nature of the problem.
Right.
But it's not, but overall, it's not an age-dependent type of care.
Yeah, now, I started out by saying, you know, there's ways of working with conventional medicine. Many times somebody's ill, and I guess I could cite my own, but maybe you have a few other examples that you can cite, which is, you know, I had the flu and I wasn't feeling well, and I got adjusted, and I felt, you know, a little bit better because it frees up, I don't know what they call it, the endorphins, or...
Well, that can free up endorphins.
Yeah.
Also, again, the nervous system controls even the immune system.
Right.
So that could help it and give it a boost. Just by feeling better, by being out of pain, just helps you to function better. But to backtrack again, I prefer to not look at the relationship between conventional medicine and chiropractic in an adversarial way. I always try as best as possible to work with the patient and with their family doctors. And there's many instances that we can work in tandem, because the ultimate goal is to take care of the person.
Right. Yeah, so can you cite some examples of somebody was under stress, maybe from cancer or heart disease or something?
Well, patients can come in and they have cancer, and they're under care for the cancer. I'm not treating the cancer by any way, but that they have other pains and issues that can respond to our types of treatment to help them feel better.
It takes the stress off.
Sure, and even in our practice, we do acupuncture in addition to the chiropractic, so that can help with the nausea that people experience with chemotherapy.
Right. And,
or last week, someone had fractured an ankle, so by using the crutches, they were having pain in the upper neck and shoulder just from using the crutches. So that was not caring for the fracture. It was not interfering in any way with the work done on the fracture, but helping the person get through their ordeal.
Right. It makes it a little easier. Takes that additional stress that's there.
Just helps to take that edge off.
Right. What type of exercises do you recommend? Is there any particular exercises that are, let's say, joint and bone friendly? In other words, is it okay to weightlift, or should people stay away from weightlifting? Is it okay to run, or should people just run on a treadmill as opposed to the run in the road?
Well, I'm actually opposed to the treadmills because I find that they're too monotonous. I find it's the same surface. Over time, we've learned that there's many more benefits to exercise than what we even think. People just think that they're just getting some cardiovascular help when they run outdoors. But by running on an uneven surface, we're getting a tremendous amount of neurological input into the body to preserve balance, which as we age is critical.
Right. So running through the fields or running in through the woods, up hills and down? I
would say running up and down hills, and especially in this part of the state, it's hard to go a mile without finding a hill.
Right.
That type of running is excellent. Actually, the common wisdom now is that as opposed to about 30 years ago or so when they wanted an hour's worth of running, now they want short, crisp wind sprints, which would be a lot better for our bodies, especially the spine. Because the spine, in order for bone to be perpetually built, it needs a stimulus. It needs stress. So I'm not saying to go out and jump off something, but like jogging up a hill, running up a hill, carrying something, those are all factors that trigger our body, that we still need calcium in our bone, help to strengthen the bone, and help to strengthen the muscles around the spine as well.
Right, so you're not advocating at all running in the road, because that can wear out knees and ankles and such, right?
Well, I would say if you run in the road, if you mix up the course.
Yeah, like one day or something.
Well, like one day you run one way and another day you run in another direction on the same road. If you break up that with running on a flatter surface, then that should be no problem. But what you don't want to get is to always do the same thing in the same way. And you always want to make sure that you're using an excellent running shoe.
Yeah, the shoes are a good part of it too.
Shoes are important, yes.
Yeah, because if you got the wrong shoe, it might be giving you additional stress and might wear out the ankles and the knees, right? Because it's taking too much pounding.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And diet. Do you have any particular advocacy? What's good? What to eat and not to eat that affects bones? I'm talking about. Obviously.
Well, I would say to go back again about the concern about too much grain. I thought that the Atkins diet is probably the closest to the healthiest in terms of keeping grains to a minimum. Of course, I disagree with staying on an all-protein diet all the time. That's just absurd. But if we tend to have a diet that has some protein with the majority of calories coming from vegetables and fruits, that would be the soundest way to go.
Vegetables and fruits, the majority.
Well, if you think about it, when you go, the ideal way to diet is to go into a supermarket and only shop on the periphery, only shop at the cases on the outside. That's where all the fruits and vegetables are, the milk is, and the meats are. Going down the aisles is all carbohydrates.
Never thought of it that way. All right. Well,
I should say bad carbohydrates.
All right. Yeah, all that stuff.
All the trans fats.
Even when they said they got rid of the trans fats, it was just out in the news recently that there's still a percentage of trans fats in there. They can't be more than 2%, but there's still something in there.
They're allowed to, as far as I understand, by law, as long as it says less than a gram per serving, that they're allowed to have it in it.
Yeah, so that's still a lot of trans fats.
So there could still be a lot of trans fats in there.
Yeah, when you add the accumulation of all that,
Exactly.
Yeah, because you're eating a lot of the stuff. And it's like salt. I don't put any salt or sugar on things, but the foods have got it built in there. So what do you say about salt and sugar?
Well, again, salt and sugar too, of course. High blood pressure is a very important problem in the country right now. Right. So salt should be avoided.
Right.
The sugars, is another problem, because it's not even the sugar that you and I had as a child. You and I had sugar from sugar cane or sugar beet.
Right.
But now it's a processed byproduct of corn, which is metabolized in a completely different way than the sugar was years ago.
Yeah, so
that's why you see even childhood obesity to the extent that we do now.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, increasingly I see kids, and I can't understand it, but they got like little bellies at 6 years old or whatever.
I've never seen. I've been in practice now, as I said, for 27 years.
Right.
Only in the past few years have I seen people in their late teens and early 20s coming in showing degenerative changes in their spine, which is extremely, extremely young.
Yeah, and that's something that's more unique to the United States than you find anywhere else, but it's starting to spread overseas, particularly in Europe, where they're starting to copy our lifestyle.
Every place that copies our lifestyle, I know China is going through a horrible problem now with childhood obesity. They, as a rule, well, I believe it's as law, have only one child, and that child is spoiled to begin with.
Right.
And now it always wants the American junk food, and obesity is a tremendous issue there.
So they got our money, and they're getting our fat, too.
Good.
Okay. Do you have a website that explains, I didn't ask you this before, but no.
Yes, I do.
Do you have a website that explains some of this for people? Okay.
Sure.
If you want to
www.drbeckchiropractic.com.
Okay. You know, that might give some insights into some of the things we've been talking about. And in summary, how does one, with 1 minute left to go, how does one try to keep themselves or keep their bones, as in the spine?
Well, you want...
like a summary.
Well, in the summary, you want a combination of stretching, strengthening, diet, exercise.
Yeah, a combination of all those.
It's a combination of everything that'll keep us going.
And don't do anything hairy like lifting heavy weight out of your trunk.
Well, you have to be cautious in everything that you do, and you have to realize you should always be aware of your mechanics, especially if you know that you tend to be a sedentary person. Don't try to and build that fence in one day.
I've been watching out for mechanics for years. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in to the community forum. Tune in next time, next week for another interesting program, and we'll see you then. Good night for now. See you then.